everyone. Thank you guys for coming. So today we have two very special guests with us today, Andrew from Cursor and Philip from Thrive. So Andrew leads product and engineering at Cursor, where he focuses on scaling AI agents. Prior to this, Andrew was a co-founder and CEO of Skiff, an end-to-end encrypted platform for email, calendar, and docs, scaling it from 0 to 2.5 million users before being acquired by Notion. Philip is a partner at Thrive, where he has spearheaded some of the most successful investments Thrive has made, including investments into OpenAI, Cursor, and physical intelligence. Prior to Thrive, Philip worked as a principal investor at 8VC and an investment associate at Bridgewater. Both are Stanford alumni and are deeply involved in organizations on campus, like the Stanford Review and Tree Hacks. So it's an honor to have both of you guys back on campus today. And thank you for your time, and we're looking forward to speaking with you both today.
Applause. So I was thinking we could start maybe by you guys telling us a bit about what brought you here today, your background. We gave a very high-level overview, but would love to hear a little more about your stories and how you got here today. Philip, if you want to start.
Yeah, well, Andrew was always a better programmer than I was. So I spent more time in ideas world than coding world. He helped me with my coding projects quite a bit when I was at Stanford. I think, honestly, I'm just an optimist and a technologist at the end of the day. I spent a lot of time at Stanford with one foot in CS classes, one foot in a lot of other types of classes that thought about how the world was evolving. And I wish I could say I called the AI boom. I think we were all reasonably ML pilled, but probably not to the extent we should have been. But a lot of my career and journey has been about how do you pursue a lot of these really exciting technology ideas in different forms. I didn't have any great ideas to start a company, and so I decided that studying great companies would be a really exciting way to spend that time because they are some of the most important forces for technological progress in history. So started that more on the macroeconomics lens at Bridgewater, and then made my way over to the venture lens more recently at Thrive.
I think I just really enjoy programming. So I've done it my whole life. I spent a lot of time doing it in classes, facilitating programming through Tree Hacks. And then, starting my own company was all about just building products. That has shifted a lot into building these collaborative, very kind of interface heavy things. Like my startup made a full stack email service. So we ran email servers, we owned, IP addresses, we sent and received emails. Then that kind of was brought into the Notion context. We launched Notion Mail, which was a whole journey by itself. And then I think I just started using Cursor so much. My co-founder and I were in the top 1, 2, or 3 Cursor spenders at Notion, $5,000+ a person a month.
Very bullish.
And it's just oh my God, you could spend infinite money on this, and it would be so much fun to just work all the time using this product. So at that point, it just made a lot more sense to be at the company and continue to ramp the Cursor spend, but while working on the product.
That's great. Do you think your Cursor's expenditures have gone up now, or?
Yeah, I think in a single, if you look at the Cursor blog, you'll see tasks that can run for a week cost trillions of tokens, meaning a single task that can cost $200,000 plus. I'm not doing those, every day or week, but you type one sentence and hit enter, and thousands of dollars can get spent is probably where we're heading.
There you go. That's great. Just one question to wrap up the background. If you had one opportunity to go back and do something differently, what would you do?
I had a lot of people ask me for career advice when I was graduating in 2019, and a lot of my smart friends would look at Tesla's ML program and FAIR and DeepMind, and there was this company called OpenAI, which wasn't actually a company. It was an Elon philanthropy at a time, and I said, if you want to work in an Elon company, you should work at Tesla for-profit, not the nonprofit. So I probably should have given better career advice. But I think in all seriousness, I think both Andrew and I were pretty good about taking advantage of a lot of the stuff Stanford had to offer being on campus. It's pretty unique how overlapped the best companies in the world are with Stanford, and I still don't think I took enough advantage of it. So I just would maximize it even more, probably.
That's a great answer. I think another part that I would or could have done better is Cursor, I think, has really critical IP, basically how does the coding agent work, how do coding models work, and then how do you kind of deliver them, tens, many, whatever, hundreds of millions of times a day to users. I feel like learning about that, getting that into your head makes you like a critical cog in the machine versus like you're kind of working on other parts of the company. So I feel like having that knowledge earlier is, something that I'm still trying to work on. Like, how can you kind of be in the critical IP of the company so you really know how everything works, and then you can kind of, adjust and make it better.
Yeah, definitely. And then kind of pivoting a little bit, Andrew, you obviously founded your startup and got it acquired. You work with generational companies. You see them go from inception to massive, massive scale. There's a lot of founders, I'm sure, here are people really interested in founding a company one day. Is there one piece of advice you would give to someone looking to start their own company now that you think doesn't get talked about enough?
I can go. I think people aren't ambitious enough. I think we're in a period of time where it really pays to have big ideas. I think there was maybe a period before either of us were sort of, economically employed where there was a lot of sort of prosaic things to do. There was this framing of like take the things in the filing cabinet and turn them into workflows. But I think today the most exciting companies are usually the ones that actually have the biggest goals: automate all of programming, solve science or biology, build the machine god, build the physical machine god, colonize Mars. And so I think it is basically almost as hard to build a small company as it is a large company. And so just spend your time actually trying to build a large company, because that's where a lot of the resources and talent and great means to actually go build that company will come from. People are attracted to those big ideas.
I feel like I see a lot of people repeat the same mistakes. You probably see this too. Like founders repeat mistakes that like they just like couldn't have really absorbed when you tell it to them. I don't know if you see that, but like they're just like desperate to hire their first like few employees, and then it turns out like you probably could have built and launched the product without that. Like everyone's like, oh, I really want to be able to hire people, and it's so hard to hire people. And it turns out like I just tweet about my like city game that I work on the side, and I've gotten 110,000 people to play that game just by having one tweet that got 5 million views. And so it's like, okay, you just kind of need to get the flywheel going with like Twitter and blogs and public presence. And I feel like maybe people could start that early. Like all of you could start your portfolios, your sites, your kind of personal brand. Think about why in 5 years like people are going to want to work for you. And I work with people who say like, I read everything you wrote about Skiff, or like I saw my co-founder Jason like has a lot of design content on. They're like, oh yeah, I had this portfolio on a list of things. And so I think like you kind of have to be out there in the world to find those people.
Speaking of that, I know I'm not supposed to be the one asking questions, but Andrew had a pretty legendary hiring streak when he was founder of Skiff. I don't know how many of you guys will know these names, but a lot of like very good Stanford alums like Yashid Rhythm, who went on to start Applied Compute, Matt Katz, who's at Caldera, Bhathal, who does a lot of pre-training at Anthropic. You were pretty good at identifying these sorts of people. Like, how'd you do that so early?
A lot of these people were some were TreeHack's friends. I don't know. I think like they're probably equivalently talented people in this room. Maybe that's the real like point. Yeah, and I think also there's something which is like that was a self-selected group. We made more offers than not. Maybe that like even if we had a 50% accept rate, that would mean half the people we made offers to did not turn out. So these people also were free thinking and risk taking enough to come work for like a small startup versus like go and do whatever internship they were going to do. So people self-selected into that, and then I think like the tree hacks and just kind of building community was great.
That'd probably be my other piece of advice, and that's a good point. Take a lot of risk when you're young. I think like it's very easy to hear that and discount it. I should have taken way more risk when I was younger. There's a lot of things that can go right, and I think we're in a very high entropy world, and so it really does pay to, I think, swing for the right tail of distribution versus trying to EV maximize.
Makes sense. Yeah. It seems like we sometimes forget that we're in such an amazing place where our peers are so smart, and it's always important to remember that. So actually, a few months back, in our talk with Jeff Jean, he mentioned that one trend in research that he thinks is underappreciated or not worked on enough was continual learning. Now it seems like continual learning is going to be a big trend for like the entire community for 2026. So Andrew, how do you think continual learning will help Cursor develop better agents or models? And Philip, what opportunities for new companies do you get excited by when you hear the word continual learning?
Yeah. I mean, I think the best part, the way that we're thinking about it is like Cursor is able to deploy models from like, at scale, basically with, kind of immense feedback in real time. So I think we already have all the infrastructure set up to be able to do like, personalization, continual learning, and roll out like new models for our tab and agent products very quickly. So that's how we're thinking about
I do think it probably does benefit a lot of the people with existing infrastructure and distribution. Sort of agents as they exist today kind of are amnesiac, right? Where you'll spend all this time writing beautiful prompts for them and crafting tool use for them, and then the next day you sort of have to institutionalize them and all the things you want. And so I think a lot of the people who have great agents today, they probably just get a lot better. My guess is there are categories where it is truly difficult to get meaningful work done without continual learning because the amount of context required to be productive is so enormous, and unless we're compounding it, it's actually hard to get really good results. Like it strikes me that probably things with really, really high marginal returns to intelligence, like very hard coding problems or science problems or maybe even like ML research problems, are really well suited to this. But I do think probably you'll actually see a lot of gains from existing companies as well as new companies.
One of the big trends also in like AI, you were talking about how companies are able to switch between different models from different providers. This is both a good thing and a bad thing, right? When you think about defensibility, from your perspective, you're actively building a company that you want to like establish a strong moat around. Like we want Cursor to be the go-to for software engineers when they want to write their code. And Philip, from your perspective, you're looking at all these different companies, and you're like, a lot of them, I'm sure they like are doing very similar things, but it's very similar ambitions. How do you guys both build and evaluate for defensibility in the current AI space?
I think you should not think about this that much when you're building a company early on. If I had thought about defensibility when we were investing in Cursor, I wouldn't have made the investment, and that would have been a catastrophic mistake. I think that's not to say it's not important. Obviously, the most important businesses do have really meaningful, durable advantages over time. But I think early on, it's actually very hard to spot what these are going to be. And they're very emergent from product and distribution success. I think now it's very easy to look backwards and tell a story of Cursor has all these amazing users that help it train all these amazing models, and also is in the workflow of everyone and has lots of tool use and configuration and memory. And maybe you could have imagined that, but like really, I think what matters early on is how do you pick a problem that matters and solve that problem effectively for people. And I think if you solve problems really effectively, it is likely that the rest will come. Otherwise, you have your MBA hat too much, and you'll optimize for something that feels defensible versus something that feels valuable.
Yeah, I mean, I think the defensible things we would do like feel sort of obvious. It's like, okay, you stop making like extensibility, settings for your agent. You kind of put it in your tool, or like, you roll out like kind of these team setup and team things, where you kind of go into like different parts of software. I feel like the things that we've done in that direction have not had nearly the traction as like just addicting people to like a more intelligent, capable agent. Like the level of like just agent ramp up even among existing users like month over month is unbelievable. And like the smallest things you could do, like give people a taste of a smarter model, do so much more than like telling them, okay, you can configure this in like your SaaS tool and then it's there for your team. And also like I think nothing has been driven by like defensibility. Like teams are so addicted to like more powerful AI workflows that like they'll overcome any obstacle. And that's why Cursor like exists at NVIDIA. Like if Copilot and whatever tools had such immense defensibility, like they would never have just like made this kind of rush to adopt Cursor at companies like this, which I think is like a lesson that maybe we should not kind of take whatever defensibility approach our competitors tried, because it's really just intelligence that people are looking for.
Super cool. So I think some people have been recently talking about like the lag between rapid advancements of like models and like frontier research versus applications of AI in kind of legacy industries or just immediately being effective in the real world economy. I think Thrive's answer has been like kind of Thrive Holdings to some sense. And I guess I'm kind of curious, in your guys' perspective, how long do you think it'll take for AI to be ubiquitous in the economic processes of the country? And what are some of the biggest hurdles to overcome for that to be true?
It's a big question. I'll give my answer. I think it's just very spiky, right? Which is to say, we probably have something that looks pretty close to AGI in coding already. Maybe Andrew would quibble with that, but at least it's very powerful AI, right? I think we can imagine that there are things that are very well suited to the models, getting there very quickly. I've tried some of the Excel plugins for some of these models recently, and they're pretty fantastic. I certainly, need to update my models a lot less than I used to. But I think there are things where the amount of work to extract the context, to actually get the models to behave really well, to exist in like really, really high stakes circumstances, you can think like parts of healthcare, the financial economy, they'll get there. They just take a lot more gritty work and a lot more pull from end users. And so it wouldn't surprise me if the future arrives at different moments. And we could be living where parts of the world and some of the people in this room are living in something that feels a lot more like very powerful AI by the end of this year, next year. And then there are parts of the world or parts of the economy where it actually takes a lot longer than that for things to diffuse.
I think I have a non-consensus cursor view. Like most people at the company don't even like. They're like, "Why are you even talking about this?" My view is like, I think we already have basically these capabilities, and I think we have them through coding agents, meaning that like coding agents are like the generalized AI agents that we're looking for. Like I can open Cursor browser, and tell like our model composer to like go and log into DoorDash and order me food. I think that's as capable as like OpenAI Atlas or Perplexity's, Comet or whatever other agentic browser you're looking for. I use Cursor and I paste in like Slack data and I'm like, make me a graph of these trends or predict where we'll be in, 6 months. I use Cursor to like analyze Databricks and Hex and all this stuff. So I think it might also, like, I have this little pipe dream where like, Cursor is 100% all in on coding. That has kind of meant like Jupyter notebooks are in this gray area. And then there's this massive other gray area, which is like all other knowledge work, which I think coding agents are capable of, but like it's kind of in this gray area of, I don't know if you'll be using Cursor for that or if we'll kind of end up experimenting there.
Do you think that means to build a good agent, you have to have a really good coding model?
Huh. Well, yeah. I mean, I think that's part of it. It's like Codex, OpenAI's coding agent. They massively simplified it. Like it kind of just uses like a shell tool to like make edits, and most other coding agents have like a set of like 5, 7, list directory, kind of read file, all this stuff. So it's pretty interesting because like if everything is just a shell tool, it just means like you get these scripts, and then that means you can kind of do anything. Like you can control a computer, you can control a browser, you can make a network request. So yeah, if I can like open Cursor and order DoorDash, I feel like that means there's some broader agent that capabilities that exist.
Yeah.
I think it's quite interesting how a lot of like frontier labs and like I guess just companies in general have kind of put a big emphasis on like code gen, because if you can code gen something, you can essentially translate into like a real world task, right? So is that like a big focus for Cursor? Because if you look at like Anthropic and OpenAI, that's a pretty big thing that they're also focused on. Or are you guys just specifically focus on developer experience?
I think if it has the word code, we are 100% focused on it, meaning we would like to have the most intelligent, capable agent that is writing code in any capacity. And I think that means like for, GPT models, for Claude models, we want our agent, and we are quite confident that it is like either as or more capable. And you can also kind of use them interchangeably. Like I can have a Claude model call a GPT, sub agent, and they can kind of, use each other's strengths. So that's how we see Cursor. But I think for, there's no limit on like the type of tasks we will require you to do with Cursor, and I think anything that is code generated we want to.
Yeah, I think a big part of this too is actually to the point of how do you get diffusion. Everyone in this room can use the terminal, is my guess. If you're sitting here, I think you'd be surprised how big a barrier this is to many people, or you wouldn't be surprised, and therefore how difficult it is for a lot of people to experience a lot of the power that Andrew is describing. I mean, obviously there are easier interfaces like Cursor, and I even have people on my team at Thrive who are not programmers who are using Cursor or Codex or what have you, but I do think UI is actually a big part of this too. We do have a lot of the tools, and exposing them to people in the right way with the right formats matters a lot.
Yeah, I think like we're all very focused on how we can use AI to like supercharge our productivity, all these things. And you guys both mentioned using these agents to extend past just code generation. What like do your guys' personal workflows look like with AI? Like when you're coding, how do you set up your station with AI? And for you, like how is AI kind of expanded past just like code generation to other tasks as well?
I mean, I'm totally cost insensitive, which means I probably run like 10, like probably thousands of agents a day. And a lot of the time I'm running like 6 or 8 in parallel. And then like I'll spend 5 seconds on each one just to like pick which one. Sometimes I just do this like iterative process where like I'll have an idea, I'll write a sentence, I'll have 6 coding agents go work on it in parallel. Then I'll like see which one kind of did what I wanted. I'm like, okay, I should have prompted this. So I'll add one more sentence. Then I have 2 sentences. And I have another 6 go do that. And then I kind of like do that 3 or 4 times. Then I kind of pick up the manual work. I think where that's going is like, I can slightly underspecify the sentences. Maybe I don't have to do these like 3 versions, but at the end, maybe I'll still kind of do the little manual work to get it done. Not manual work like I'm typing words. Manual work like I check out the branch. I give it. I write
God
more
forbid you
prompts.
had type tokens.
That's going away too. I mean, actually, just huge alpha here. The biggest insight I've had is I never do git commands anymore. I'm just like, stash this, push this to this branch, like go open a PR. That has been the biggest weight off my shoulders. Like you don't have to do like git diff or you don't have to like remember any of that. You just kind of tell your like little guy, to go do that stuff. I actually think like Cursor should do git commands like for free. I don't know if we're gonna do that, but it's so just like such a weight off like I think mental load when programming that I wish we could like give everyone git agents for free.
I'm a huge proponent of that. But
Oh, that's
also,
awesome.
I do have another quick question. Do you still write any code by hand?
No.
You guys heard it here first.
I wrote like the word const last Saturday. I think.
Well, I write less code for my job, although we do sometimes build these fun little vibe-coded apps to do ideation and analysis at Thrive. One of my partners, actually, we were looking at software names. Right now, I don't know how much you guys follow the public markets, but the public markets have basically decided that anything that is not called OpenAI or Anthropic or NVIDIA is worthless. And so public SaaS companies have taken a real beating and sort of going through and thinking about, may there be some diamonds in the rough there, maybe not. But one of my partners literally just like took a list of names, built out this really cool dashboard we could use to like sort ideas by and track what's gone down, what's go up, what do the metrics look like. So I think a lot of cool tool creation. But honestly, I think for us, if you think about my job, there are really 3 things you need to be able to do, which is come up with good ideas, assess ideas in people, and then do the work to substantiate or insubstantiate that analysis. Coming up with ideas, I think the models are somewhat helpful for. To be honest, I actually don't think they're quite creative enough yet, but I'm sure give it a year or 2. Assessing ideas, really, really good. I a lot of my day used to be doing research, reading blogs, looking at different types of analytical files. I feel like I've been able to sort of compress that to very, very little effort. And so now I just get to live mostly in sort of idea and people world, which is a lot more fun for me. I feel a lot of happiness that future investment analysts at Bridgewater or elsewhere won't have to write Scala or look at Excel files. We used to call it the chart mines, where you had to build like these constantly very pretty charts. And so I think you get to be judged by the value of your ideas, your value of working with people. And I think that's, to me, all the fun in the job. And so it's nice to be able to abstract everything else away.
Yeah, maybe 1 or 2 more questions, then we'll open up to audience Q&A.
Yeah.
You have a question?
I have a question, yeah. So going actually more in the product direction, how do you guys quickly like iterate through products or determine like when products are not worth essentially moving forward with or not worth even starting? Either like they make the workflows too complicated, they don't provide value to the end user, or they're just not good from like a business point of view. If you could shed kind of some light on your product decisions.
Yeah, I feel like there's a very simple criteria, which is like, does it help people use the agent more? And then if everyone like thinks that a million times a day, it can make really good product decisions. Like, for example, Cursor cannot edit the file like home directory / like .cursor / like hooks, because then it could like, insert kind of like very security sensitive code execution as the agent is running. So if you're a user at NVIDIA, Cursor should not edit that file. But there's a million other files that are in that same folder that Cursor should be allowed to edit, like a rules file. And like this is one example where like Cursor would ask you for permission, when editing that file, and it really shouldn't have. And so I think like if everyone on the team just thinks like, oh my gosh, everything about Cursor is focused on the agent, the person implementing that would know they have to be really careful. Like you should not create these impediments to like how the agent works. And I think there's a million like ways that trickles down. We launched like sub agents last week, and on like a legacy pricing plan that's request based, you had to like toggle max mode on in the product to be able to use sub agents. That's no longer the case, but like the person implementing sub agents would have realized like no one's ever going to know to toggle this thing on to use this like incredibly powerful agent feature. And so I think just like making sure everyone on the team knows that can answer these questions.
For sure. I guess one last question before we turn it to audience Q&A. Nobody really knows kind of what the future will look like for work, right? Like this is a big kind of question mark, especially in software engineering. Like you mentioned, you don't really write code by hand anymore. For a group of people who are looking to start their careers right now, what skills do you think are very like high return on investment and high signal to develop as someone earlier in their career today?
I think building hard and important things, which is a little bit of an abstract idea, but I think it is genuinely true that at this point, regardless of your background, if you're a reasonably intelligent and high agency individual, you should be able to build most things that aren't deep AI or science research problems. And I actually think the most important skill set I see in founders or even really successful operators at companies is the ability to take a really abstract and important problem statement and get results on it in a very short amount of time. I think this requires high levels of pain tolerance, it requires creativity, it requires the ability to take ideas and turn to something tangible and impactful. And there's no formula or, set of algos that you can use to sort of get an answer to this, but I do think it is still a little bit like training for a marathon, and the earlier you start training, the more marathons you can run in your life.
I think my take on the future of work is that there will still be really, really strong engineers. At Cursor, there's like a very small group of people that know like absolutely everything, and that group of people is like everything to the company. And that's what I mean. Like these people are like the company's whole IP distilled down into like just a few brains. So I think the best people, like, or many people in this room, can be those people at your companies or at other companies. You're like everything to those companies. And then I think like more knowledge workers could just be using coding agents to do their work. And like they might not be like engineers, or they might not be the kind of hardcore of the hardcore CS majors, but they might still be using like a coding agent to do data analysis or research or substantiating ideas or something else.
Sure. Okay. I think we'll open it up to audience questions now. If you have a question, just raise your hand, I guess. I think I saw that hand go up.
Okay. As an investor, what are the skills that like you think would give a highest ROI or would give out a return as an alpha in like this day and age with AI to impact a lot?
It's a great question. I actually think there are a lot of the same skills, which is great taste in people and great taste in ideas. In a lot of ways, great companies are great companies, and now we have tools to build even cooler companies, but the fundamentals of what makes a company great haven't changed. Maybe the ways in which those show up or how fast they can move. I do think the thing that has probably changed is that, and this is probably true in building as well, just seeing how fast Cursor has grown, especially since Andrew joined. The timelines at which things can get done have just been compressed really radically. It's like a little bit of a truism, but things that I think in past years might have taken weeks, months, years, take days. And so I think the ability to process information and update your worldview really quickly based on that, and then also understand if things are going to change really quickly, what's going to continue to be valuable versus what's not going to continue to be valuable. That is probably just a skill that is more important than it used to be, given, we might be playing sort of speed chess versus normal chess right now.
Thanks for taking the time to talk to us today. We touched on this a little bit, but love to get y'all thoughts on, I guess, the spectrum of interface with agents. So on one end, you have efforts at Thrive, like Thrive Holdings, Long Lake, where it's kind of like you're building tools out of the box for real world deployment. So it's a lot more human driven. In the middle, you kind of have like AI coworkers. And on the other end, you have like very long horizon AI agents. Just, I guess, in an ideal case, how much are you really interfacing with the computer, and at what inflection points, at what decision node would you really like kind of interface?
I'm gonna leave that to you first. It's a good question.
I mean, I think the most obvious thing with like cursor is that like many things are just like zooming out more, so we're gonna probably follow that. Like you zoom out from like tab to like Command K to like chat to one file then to a few files, and then like you have this conversation right now and a bunch of the conversations like you'll probably zoom out where like you don't need to read like the thinking text and you don't need to read the like edits. So that's the simplest thing. I feel like we don't have the solution to like your right now we do the experiments on like the agent that runs for a week, and like the interface for that is like someone who's squinting at like 100 like really rapid text to see if they can like just kind of pattern match something going wrong. That is obviously not a practical interface for that, so I think we'll see. The one thing I really like in Cursor is like a browser, meaning it's kind of taking you full circle. It's like the full vibe version of Cursor. You just kind of see the finished product and you ask for what you want. I don't care about the conversation. I just want like the text, like the whole for my text, and then the output of my app.
The browser tab was a lifesaver when I was working on my website.
Thank you. That was my innovation.
One of the best things web dev has ever seen. I think I saw a hand in the back over there.
Yeah, thanks, guys. I had a question mainly based off of like the response that it gives you. It codes something for you, and then it says that it's the most revolutionary, perfect zero collision thing in the world. But it doesn't go and suggest to you the thing that you need to formally reduce. So these suggestions are really awesome in Cursor, and it gives you some next steps. But then the intuition of the developer is like, if they don't have that expert knowledge, like that 40-year experience that they kind of would need to really kind of have that seniority over it, how do you sort of interpret that? So if they do think it's revolutionary, and then they go and pitch an investor, and it's not revolutionary, the claim is kind of embarrassing. How do you sort of curve the tie on that?
I don't know if this is a total answer to your question. I feel like among really good engineers that I work with, some have just like been fully brain rotted and they're still really effective, but they just like only go through the agent. They've clearly never like looked at their code and they make a lot of obvious mistakes. I think then there are people who are really careful and they're still only using coding agents. They're only typing in Cursor, not like typing text, but they're very careful. And I think that like second type of engineer is like, just unbelievably valuable, like just, 100, 1,000 times valuable. And they can be trusted to be like the dictator for the rest of the team or for like the other coding agents. That's kind of how we've structured a lot of projects now where like, there kind of has to be one point of failure, which is the person who's making like the real decisions. And then kind of people who are just like, not brain rot in a bad way, but like they're just kind of, executing with the agent and they're really good and fast. They don't have to make those decisions.
So this one's more like a labor markets prediction question, but I think part of the allure of a lot of these AI companies is previously you had enterprise software budgets that were in the hundreds of billions of dollars. But then when you look at U.S. labor overall, you're talking like $15 trillion, right? So these companies can become really valuable because they have the context to go out and build long horizon enterprise agents that can replace knowledge work. I'm curious what your views are on, in the next 2 years, 5 years. Do you expect that like certain parts of knowledge work will be completely displaced and replaced by agents? Do you expect we're going to continue to work with them in a complementary function where you're side by side with it, like kind of what you do today and maybe what someone might do in healthcare? I'm curious what that looks like.
I can try to crack. I think it's a really important question. And I think it's an important one to be serious about because it's hard to imagine technology as important as the one we're talking about, and there aren't ripple effects. I think anyone who tells you otherwise is probably just not thinking rigorously about it. That said, I will make the observation that I've seen agents fire very few people. Like almost everyone I know and every company I work with uses Cursor or some other coding agent in addition. And I don't think any of them have done engineering layoffs. They've just done a lot more. And so I think there's a third lever here, which is how much net new value creation can we have? If you want a little bit of a little history lesson or an analogy, back in the 1960s and 70s, there was like this big population doomerism, which is like, a bunch of developing economies can't sustain their populations. China's going to run out of food. India's going to run out of food. It turned out like we had the Green Revolution. We grew a lot of crops. Everyone's totally fine. And we can support close to an infinite global population up to this point. I wonder if we're being too zero-sum when we sort of frame the question this way, which is that, there's a fixed budget of labor dollars and they need to go somewhere or not go somewhere. But if we end up actually creating a lot more value with that by solving a lot harder and more important problems, the whole thing actually sort of grows. And yes, there's some displacement we need to be careful about, but actually in aggregate, it's really net beneficial for everyone. That'd be my hope, at least. And honestly, I think sort of where the early data points might be pointing.
Quick follow-up. There's a lot of rhetoric right now online that, you hear from Elon or other people that, like, working is going to be optional, like 20 years or something. What are you guys' thoughts on that?
I'm more optimistic that we're going to find really cool problems to work on.
I think working already is optional, right? Like,
Okay. Very different takes.
Yeah, I think working already is optional. And like, I think there isn't like a company like Cursor, you're kind of all in or all out. So, I think it kind of already works like that.
Fair enough.
I think we have time for one more question. Yeah, you.
So in some senses, the base models are getting better. Like code is one of the most prevalent forms of data on the internet. And then at the same time, we see models like GPT 5.2 Codex come out. We see Composer 1. Do you think models are going to continue specializing? Like, do you think they're diminishing marginal returns to scaling? Or do you see that like base models become more prevalent? And then if so, why is there like focus on something like Composer?
That's a really good question. I think the general feeling across Cursor is that like all forms of like research are still way kind of like underutilized, and that there's a lot of progress that can be made on better base models, on coding specific tasks, on like short horizon tasks, on long horizon tasks, on like coding style, on like making models that just like do terminal commands better, on models that are now able to like run code and evaluate their work, on like task tracking. I think basically everywhere there's like boundless improvements that people still think can be made.
I think Andrew said it really well. I think we're just early. Dollars are very productively spent. I remember on the first OpenAI pitch meeting I ever sat in on, Sam had a very memorable line, which is that we are going to spend as much on training AI models as the Apollo program, and it's probably going to be net more beneficial for humanity. And I think he was absolutely right.
I think that's it for the audience questions. We have one last fun question to ask.
Take it away.
And that is, final question, do you think we're in a bubble, yes or no?
Definitely not.
There are really, really great companies getting created, and there are really bad companies getting created, as there always are in any situation, but the great companies will be more valuable than any other companies ever created.
Perfect. Great. Thank you guys so much.